Despite it being day, the moon can still be seen in the bright blue sky. The city is as busy as ever, with people trying to head to their destined locations for the day. A girl inside the train excuses herself bumping into other passengers since she needs to get down at her stop. Yui notices her struggling to get out, so she gets into the girl's space to assist her, telling the girl to go ahead. With heart in her eyes, the girl expresses her thanks and manages to get off the train. The door closes and the girl inhales and exhales deeply, glad that the entire ordeal is over. Inside the train, two girls are whispering about Yui as they gush because she looks cool. They wonder if Yui is single and briefly consider asking her out. They assume Yui is a male, but when they see her full form, they notice she is wearing a skirt. Outside of the school, a girl is trying to hand Yui a present. She is shy and trembling as she urges Yui to accept her gift. Yui makes an attempt to turn down the gift, but after taking a good look at the girl and noticing how much she wants Yui to take it, she ends up accepting. At the gym lockers, Yui opens the gift, which turns out to be a towel with her initials. Her friends Nobara and Kotobuki catch her and notice that Yui has accepted yet another present from a girl. Her friends tease her since she still charms girls, which is something she's been unconsciously doing since middle school. Because she has a hard time refusing gifts, girls continue showering her with presents. Both of them assume that Yui is enjoying the situation, but in reality, Yui doesn't enjoy the attention. She is tall, slender, with a low tone of voice, and her features have earned her the nickname of Prince in the school. As she walks the halls to head to class, several girls call out to her, calling her Prince. Kotobuki expresses that their excitement is valid since Yui is way more appealing than most of the guys in their school. She recalls Yui's heroic feat last year during field day, where she helped a girl who fell. Yui carried the girl to the finish line and still placed first. She continues to compliment Yui, saying that Yui is like a hero straight out of a romance novel. Yui wonders about being a hero. Two female students await by the corner to catch a glimpse of Yui. They notice the other girls, so Yui decides to take a detour. Yui walks around, and as she exits a building, spots a handkerchief on the ground. She calls out to the student, personally handing the handkerchief back. The students swoon over her appearance as Yui abruptly leaves. As she jogs away from the crowd, she thinks deeply about how people seem to consider her more as a hero or prince instead of a girl. She doesn't blame them, having accepted that this will be how she is treated due to her looks. Suddenly, she is shocked when Kohaku jumps from above, landing in front of her. Unable to react in time, Yui ends up on the ground. Kohaku apologizes and asks if she is okay. Kohaku observes her closely and cups her face, remarking how beautiful she looks. He then realizes that Yui might actually be a boy, which disappoints Yui. Yui, taking offense, asks him to get out of the way. Kohaku looks at Yui as she walks away and wonders if he remembers her from somewhere. In her classroom, Yui is lost in thought. Kohaku, mistaking her for a boy, had upset her for some reason. She suddenly notices that the girls in the classroom seem to be excited over something, so she decides to ask her friends what the deal is. Nobara shares that there is another prince in the school. She then adds that there is a rumor that the other prince's dad is a multimillionaire who had brought several women to tears. Yui doubts the validity of the rumors. Yui regards the other prince as none of her concern and goes back to her notes, unaware that Kohaku is looking at her from outside. Their eyes meet, they remember each other from the morning. Kohaku crudely asks if Yui is okay, and everyone kicks up a fuss over how the two princes know each other. They surround Yui with questions, making Yui realize the other school prince is Kohaku. From outside, Kohaku's friends ask how he came to know Yui. They mention she is famous, considered a prince in their school despite being a girl. This surprises Kohaku since he thought she was just a beautiful boy. His friends call him rude as he looks up to Yui, where everyone surrounds her. Suddenly, he feels himself growing curious. After class, Yui drags herself to the store, still worn out from the sudden attention she got from everyone in class. She managed to clear up the misunderstanding, but the girls' relief had left her feeling disheartened since they don't seem to look at her as a girl either. She sees something she wants to eat and moves to grab it, but stops herself when she notices the cashier is getting bothered by a drunk. Yui steps in, threatening the man that she will call the police. Angry, the drunk man grabs Yui, telling her to mind her own business. Kohaku steps in, taking evidence of the drunk customer's behavior on his phone. The drunk man demands that Kohaku should delete the evidence. Annoyed, Kohaku grabs the man by his jaw, telling him to get lost. He then notices Yui and lets the drunk go so he can greet her. As he is chatting away, the drunk makes a move to strike Kohaku, but Yui swiftly blocks the attack and scolds the man for attacking from behind. Everyone in the store is charmed by her heroic move. Kohaku even snickers at her action. The store manager then complains about the commotion and begins beating the drunk for making such a scene as Kohaku drags Yui out of the store. They end up in a park under a full moon. Yui wonders how she ends up in this situation. Kohaku commands Yoi's actions, asking about her move. Yoi shares that she knows martial arts, which impresses Kohaku. He now understands why the girls call her a prince. Yoi remarks on this, saying she didn't choose to be a prince. She considers herself normal, but everywhere she goes she hears prince or hero. She wonders why she had decided to tell her troubles to Kohaku. Kohaku affirms that it is okay for girls to not be demure, and that having a prince-like girl in the mix is alright. Kohaku admits what Yoi said back in the store made his heart flutter. Yoi thanks him, and Kohaku decides to call her by her first name, even adding Chan as a suffix. Yoi is surprised, wondering where he had learned her name. Kohaku wonders how, despite Yoi's beauty, she's never been treated like a princess. Kohaku assumes the men around Yoi must have horrible taste. Yoi feels uneasy being called beautiful for the first time, so she isn't sure if Kohaku is serious. Suddenly, Kohaku lifts Yoi like a princess out of the blue. Being her first time, this throws Yoi into a panic. Kohaku assures her that his arms won't be broken and asks if she feels like a heroine now. The wind blows, and under the streetlights, Yoi blushes, much to Kohaku's surprise. Yoi pushes herself off and says she needs to go home, running away. Yoi feels that she is not the type to experience such things and sits down in the middle of the street, overwhelmed with new feelings. She convinces herself that she is fine and that she was only surprised. Back in the park, Kohaku is also confused about the feeling that briefly overcame him, but he only takes a moment to decide he likes it. The next day, Yoi goes to school and manages to maintain a graceful exterior despite actually being embarrassed over her reaction last night. She chides herself for being self-conscious. As she climbs the stairs, Kohaku spots her and calls out to her like old friends. He asks why she had left so suddenly, and she tries to hide her embarrassment by saying she had something urgent to take care of. Yoi asks if it's okay for them to be talking given their reputation. She feels like the school might take their relationship the wrong way. Kohaku bluntly says he doesn't care and the school can go ahead and make assumptions. He then starts going down the steps to meet her, admitting he has taken interest in her. Yoi takes it as a prank, asking if someone is hiding or filming in secret. Kohaku assures her that is not the case and has trouble explaining what he feels since he is sure it isn't exactly love that he's feeling. Suddenly, he gets an idea on how to explain his sudden fixation on her and says that he wants to keep watching her forever, describing the feeling like how someone would like to see something beautiful every day. He also admits that he does not want to take his eyes off her. Something Yoi says is what a stalker would do. Kohaku counters that a stalker wouldn't admit anything to his victims, but he's coming out clean to her with his intentions and asks Yoi for lunch. Yoi bluntly refuses, fixing him with his suspicious gaze. As she continues to walk to class, Yoi looks back on how men usually perceive her. Her experience is limited to most saying she is regarded as handsome and not cute and men calling her a cool prince, so no one really had a romantic interest in her. She continues to wonder about Kohaku's feelings for her in the classroom. This makes the girls around her think she looks amazing despite looking troubled. She can imagine someone called Prince taking interest in her. She bets Kohaku says all those things to other girls. Her friends shake her out of her thoughts by asking her to lunch. She begins to ease up as she chats with them. But Kohaku ruins the moment by showing up in her classroom asking for her time. His presence causes the classroom to fall into chaos as gossip begins to fill the room about their actual relationship. Seeing that her classmates are close to misunderstanding the situation, she hurriedly goes to Kohaku and tells him that she's ready for the special committee meeting, pushing him out of the classroom. However, this does little to satisfy her classmates' curiosity. Kohaku brings Yoi to an empty classroom knowing she does not want to be seen by others. Seeing that he just wants to have lunch with her, she decides to entertain his request, but decides she should finish early so she can return to her classroom. She unpacks her lunchbox neatly on the table and prepares to dig in. However, Kohaku is only sipping on a juice box by the window. She decides to ask him to take a seat, but is surprised when he takes the seat directly in front of her. After her initial shock, she realizes Kohaku did not sit down until he was sure she was comfortable. She observes him longer and notices how nice his long fingers and face look. She pushes the thought aside for now and pours her curry sauce onto the rice neatly. Kohaku expresses his amazement at how well prepared her lunch looks, and Yoi shares that her family owns a curry restaurant. Kohaku is amazed since he had never met someone with a curry restaurant. Yoi admits that she doesn't openly share that her family owns one because she fears a possible nickname will be given to her. This makes Kohaku curious as he begs her to share it and promises not to laugh at her. Nervously, she admits she might be called the Curry Prince. He manages to maintain a blank face, but it eventually becomes too much for him and he ends up laughing. She reprimands him for breaking his promise, but Kohaku claims that he likes the fact that she has a curry restaurant and even considers it cute. Yoi is confused, so Kohaku explains that how she's self-conscious about it is endearing and everything about her is cute. Yoi fixes him with a strict stare, asking him to stop because she doesn't know how to respond. To her shock, he says that it's good. He grabs her tie and admits that he likes her expressions and hopes that Yoi will show him more. Yoi is shocked, since this is the first time a guy had ever hit on her. Sentaro calls out to Kohaku from outside the classroom. Sentaro opens the door, finding Kohaku inside. He doesn't see Yoi because she had decided to keep herself hidden behind the curtains. Yoi is thankful for the interruption because she thought she was going to combust with Kohaku's flirting earlier. When Kohaku asks what's up, Sentaro asks about the cute senior Kohaku was supposed to hang out with. Apparently, Kohaku didn't reply to her messages. Yoi remembers Kohaku's reputation of being a player, which makes her snap back into her senses. Yoi opens the curtains, revealing herself. Sentaro was surprised to see Yoi there, not expecting the two princes to be in the same room. Yoi tells Kohaku to refrain from inviting her to lunch ever again. Yoi stuffs her items back in her lunch bag and politely leaves with a stuttering Sentaro in her wake. However, Kohaku notices she left her curry container. Yoi walks down the hallway, thoughts of Kohaku being a playboy occupying her mind. She finds him calling her cute and possible and believes Kohaku calls everyone that. Determined, she reminds herself not to be fooled by his cheap words. At the family diner, Yoi serves the customers. Some regulars compliment her appearance, causing her to laugh. Helping her father at the register, two female customers bet Yoi is always told how handsome she is. Yoi smiles politely in return. Memories surface of how people keep calling her handsome, alongside the one with Kohaku calling her cute. As much as she believes it is nothing special, Yoi keeps remembering it since it is a first for her. Hearing new customers come in, Yoi looks up to greet them, only to find Kohaku and Sentaro. Flustered, Yoi asks why they are here, wondering if she's being stalked. Kohaku dispels her fears, handing over the curry container she left earlier. Kohaku and Sentaro enter, and Yoi announces their arrival to have seats prepared. Yoi's father upgrades their curry plates after finding out they are from Yoi's school. Yoi asks Kohaku if he's telling everyone that her family runs a curry place. Kohaku denies this since Sentaro naturally found out. Back in the classroom, Sentaro recognized the sticker label on Yoi's curry container as being from a recommended restaurant. He apparently is a big curry fanatic, and to prove his point, both of them turn their gaze to Sentaro, who happily takes photos with his camera. As the boys dig in, Yoi's father teasingly asks who her boyfriend is since the only males she talks to are him and other patrons. Seeing her converse with other men puts his mind at ease. Yoi takes the moment to observe Kohaku, and based on his face she can tell he is thoroughly enjoying his food. She catches herself staring and shakes it off so she can focus on work. Completely full, Kohaku wants to sleep while Sentaro prepares to go home to write his food review. Sentaro settles the bill and gives his social media account right before he leaves. Yoi approaches Kohaku, who does not want to get up. Kohaku slips his finger on Yoi's palm as she picks up their plates. Kohaku asks if he can walk her home after work. Yoi pulls her hand away and says that she can't just leave as easily. Nearby, Yoi's father peeks out and tells Yoi she can clock out early, much to Yoi's surprise. Outside, he advises her to be home by 9 and leaves. Kohaku remarks that Yoi seems close to her dad and compliments their curry place. They walk together, and Yoi decides to satisfy her curiosity. She asks about Kohaku's supposed hangout with their senior. Kohaku says he declined since returning the curry container is more important. Yoi said he could have returned it another day, and breaking a promise with a woman is not good. Kohaku smiles and explains that Yoi's personality is very fitting for a prince. Kohaku then apologizes for upsetting her during lunch. He had intended to visit her to set things right, but he noticed he had only annoyed her further. Taken aback, Yoi tries to explain that she isn't mad, but she finds herself at a loss for words. Suddenly, a heavy downpour falls on them. Kohaku tells her to run and follow him and leads her to a big home. Yoi soon learns that this is actually Kohaku's place, and he is inviting her in so she won't catch a cold. Drenched, Yoi takes Kohaku's old clothes to change into. Looking around, Yoi asks about the grand house, and Kohaku replies his grandfather is the president of the company. While changing, Yoi remembers Nobara mentioning the same thing. However, Kohaku doesn't carry himself like a rich person, and even eats food a regular student would eat. Yoi exits the bathroom in Kohaku's clothes, naturally looking good on her. Kohaku steps forward while complimenting her looks, and Yoi blocks him with his self-defense stance. Kohaku tells her to relax because he is just going to make them some tea. Yoi looks around again and wonders if they are alone. She wonders out loud if the school calls Kohaku a prince because of his wealth. Kohaku finds the reason for his moniker dumb. He wants to stay low-keyed in school and explains that he had declined the invitation from their senior earlier because he had never agreed to hang out with her in the first place. Yoi realizes she was under the wrong assumption earlier. Embarrassed, she bows deeply in apology since she jumped to conclusions. Kohaku lightly brushes it aside, but Yui corrects him, saying she doesn't have experience with men, and that causes her to be uncomfortable. To hide this from him, she had intentionally made herself appear cold. She admits it is the first time a man showed interest and is unsure how to handle things. After her apology, Kohaku hooks his finger with hers, closing their distance. He asks Yui if she is okay with what he did, and Yui finds herself unable to move. Their reverie is broken by the sound of Yui's phone ringing. Her dad is calling her. Realizing it is late, Yui exclaims she must go home. Kohaku insists on walking her back. On the walk back, Yui assures Kohaku that she won't talk about his house. Kohaku tells her that it's fine since they actually reside in a condo that acts as their decoy home, so no one is going to find out. Yui looks at him with astonishment due to how entitled he is. Yui wonders if it is okay for her to know, and Kohaku says that even if she wants to kill him, he'll let it happen since that would mean the last thing he sees is someone beautiful. Yui calls him out for laying it thick, and Kohaku assures her it is a joke. He advises her to always call him out or else he'll sound crazy. They decide to part ways at a convenience store. Yui feels that she should be the one walking Kohaku back, but Kohaku says that it will defeat the purpose of walking Yui home. Kohaku asks Yui to call him by his first name and confesses that his feelings for her are closer to love than he originally assumed. Yui watches as he leaves, baffled by the confession and her own feelings toward Kohaku. At school, Nobara and Kotobuki are excited about Yui's experience with Kohaku. They ask more about her relationship with him, making it difficult for Yui to reply. Still, the two princes being together excites the two girls, especially Nobara, who is a BL enthusiast. Given Yui's nature, they think the assertive and experienced Kohaku might be a great match for Yui. Yui continues to deflect, and Nobara shares that the initial dislike will make the romance spicier down the line. They think Yui is getting special treatment since Kohaku is generally indifferent towards girls, going as far as calling it fate if they end up together, causing Yui to choke on her food. Yui's impression of Kohaku has changed since they first met, but she still doubts Kohaku is serious with her. While buying a drink, girls call out to Kohaku. He strikes a pose, which excites them. Another pair of girls approach him and say that they heard he turned down the senior who asked him to hang out. They then try to persuade him to go with them instead, but he turns them down, claiming he is busy. They then joke that the reason might be Yui, and share that Yui looks too much like a man. Kohaku didn't like their tone at all and called them ugly to their faces. Calling him names, they storm off. Shun and Sentaro point out that he tends to be a little too harsh with females. They both wonder about Kohaku's sudden interest towards Yui, since she is the opposite of the girls he dates. Kohaku stops and turns to explain that it's weird that no one else is interested in her. For Kohaku, Yui's appearance is enough to spark curiosity, and how she acts, especially when talking to men, is interesting. He goes on until Shun tells him to stop before he goes too far. Shun believes it is the impure thoughts that drive Kohaku to make the first move, which is unlike him. Kohaku, having none of his friends' comments, decides to skip class. Kohaku continues to be curious about Yui and wonders why no one is intrigued by her beauty. To him, Yui is someone that anyone would stop and stare at. He wonders how the desire to know more about her counts as impure. Yui suddenly feels a chill, which worries her friends, so she decides to go to the nurse's office to get medicine. When she's a distance away from her friends, she halts her steps because she feels that her fever is getting to her. She feels it's probably from getting drenched in the rain. She opens the door to the nurse's office, only to find Kohaku inside. She immediately slams the door shut, and Kohaku calls her rude from the inside. They struggle by the door handle, with Kohaku overpowering her and opening the door. Kohaku notices Yui's fevered state. He asks if she's okay, which Yui dismisses, wanting to be alone. Kohaku gets her a glass of water, telling her to ask for help when she needs it. He encourages Yui to not be a prince in front of him. Sitting on the floor, Yui accepts the water. She slowly stands up and makes her way inside the nurse's office. Kohaku offers to get the nurse as Yui makes her way to the bed. Lying on her side, Yui closes her eyes as the fever overtakes her. However, she snaps her eyes open when Kohaku suddenly lies next to her, announcing that the nurse is out. Yui tries to get him to leave, but Kohaku refuses, explaining that he'll help warm her up. Eventually, she feels her energy get drained, and Kohaku insists as he shuffles closer, promising that he won't do anything. Yui fixes him with a stern glare and refuses, so Kohaku decides to get under the blanket and cuddle closer to her instead. He begins patting her head, and Yui can only grumble about getting him back once she feels better. He chides her for not just staying home, but Yui doesn't want to tarnish her record for never being absent. As they continue to talk, Yui feels herself slowly getting comfortable in the position. Kohaku notices and describes that hugging him feels like hugging a cat, and Yui can honestly agree that it does feel that way. They end up sleeping till the end of school, and Kohaku insists that he walk her home. When he leaves to get his things, she notices that her bag is by the bedside table with a note. The note is from her friends who had gone to check on her. and seeing that she was asleep with Kohaku, they had decided to leave her things but also write how she looked cute with Kohaku. Yui wonders what she is even doing with him. They eventually leave school grounds and Kohaku tries to invite her to eat, but Yui insists on heading straight home. She suddenly feels like she's getting used to walking home with him, then Kohaku takes her by surprise by admitting that Yui is comfortable to sleep with. Yui feels uncomfortable with the declaration, but Kohaku insists it's an essential part of finding a soulmate, which makes her think about her conversation with her friends. Curious, Yui asks Kohaku's idea on fate, to which he invites her to test if they are fated for each other by dating. He is about to take his offer back and play it off as a joke, but Yui surprises him by accepting. Yui expects Kohaku to take her suggestion as a joke, but as she observes him, he seems to be seriously considering it. Kohaku then asks how far they plan to go with the experiment, explaining that if they don't go that far, then it would be no different than just being friends. Yui is shocked, only then realizing that she suggested something she isn't actually ready for. Flustered, she asks Kohaku to give her some time to rethink her suggestion. Completely embarrassed and confused by the situation she put herself in, Yui turns and runs off in a different direction. The next day, she tells her friends about the experiment she suggested to Kohaku. She regrets her words because she had honestly thought he would just take it as a joke. She feels frustrated with herself because she always seems to play right into his hands. This time, she had wanted to turn the tables by making the first move. Instead of making Kohaku flustered, however, she ended up being the one completely thrown off. While thinking about how she somehow ended up in a situation that looked like she was dating him, her friends notice how girly she suddenly seems. They tease her about the change, but also reassure her that the situation isn't a bad thing, even suggesting that maybe it's something meant to be. As Yui mulls over the idea of fate, she suddenly hears a commotion among the girls. To her horror, Kohaku appears by the open classroom window and casually asks to talk to her. She overhears her classmates immediately starting to make assumptions. With a menacing aura, Yui stands up, making it clear that she intends to have a serious conversation. Out in the courtyard, she tells Kohaku to stop visiting her classroom and questions why he brought extra people with him. His friends, Sentaro and Shun, introduce themselves, while Yui calls out her own friends, who were eavesdropping behind the bushes. Kohaku approaches the girls and they introduce themselves. He pats both of them on the shoulder, claiming he's already memorized them, only to get their names wrong. Finally getting back to the point, Kohaku asks Yui if she's thought about the idea of them dating, immediately sending their friends into a frenzy. Yui admits that she did think about it and pulls out a contract she prepared, surprising everyone as she begins to read it aloud. It seems that Yui is agreeing to the relationship, but the number of off-limits rules she sets makes the arrangement feel stiff. The boys ask her friends if Yui is always this strict, and the girls admit that she is. After Yui finishes reading the contract, Kohaku asks why she didn't simply take back her words. With confidence, Yui answers that she hates giving up, a response that makes Kohaku fall for her just a little more. Smiling, he offers his hand to seal the deal, and the two shake on it. Their friends are left stunned as the scene looks less like the start of a relationship and more like the beginning of a battle. When the bell rings, the group prepares to head back to class. However, Kohaku suddenly pulls Yui aside, saying he has something he wants to discuss with her. Their friends leave without much resistance, only for Kohaku to admit that he actually has nothing important to talk about. He simply wanted to spend a little extra time alone with Yui. Yui tries to pull away from his hold, pointing out a clause in their contract regarding skinship, but Kohaku easily counters that he's only touching her in a platonic way. Feeling unsettled, Yui remarks that she's noticed Kohaku seems to be the possessive type. Kohaku is taken aback and slowly releases his grip on her. Yui's comment is making him realize that he may be acting out of character. He concludes that it's probably because this is the first time he's genuinely wanted someone. When Yui asks him to explain further, he conveniently claims to have forgotten what he just said. Seeing no point in pressing the issue, Yui asks for his contact information. Kohaku gives it to her, but saves his name simply as K. The second bell rings and Yui makes a move to leave, but Kohaku asks if they can walk home together. She considers the offer but ultimately declines, reasoning that it might give them away. Kohaku heads off to his own class, leaving Yui alone. Later at home, Yui lies in bed thinking about how easily Kohaku slipped into the role of her boyfriend while she was the one left flustered and fumbling around him. When Yui tries to rest, her mind keeps replaying the way Kohaku has been saying her name, and she begins to panic over the decision she made. The memory of Kohaku admitting that he wants her lingers in her thoughts, causing her to blush. Kohaku is out eating with his friends when his phone suddenly chimes. As soon as he checks it, he nearly chokes on his food and quickly apologizes for startling everyone at the table. Meanwhile, Yui stares at her phone in disbelief. She has just sent a message to Kohaku asking him out on a date for the weekend. She tries to convince herself that things like fate are something a person chooses for themselves. On the day of their date, Yui arrives at their agreed meeting spot early. As she waits, other girls can't help but admire her, mistaking her for a handsome boy. As she lets her mind wander, she feels a twinge of disappointment as she recalls how plain Kohaku's response to her message was. As she struggles to make sense of her emotions, Kohaku suddenly appears and walks up to her. He admits that he knew she would arrive early, so he hurried as well. That's when he notices that Yui is wearing her school uniform. Yui explains that she had something to do at school before meeting him, refusing to admit she couldn't decide what to wear. When Kohaku asks about her plans for the day, Yui honestly admits that she doesn't have any and thought they could just watch a movie. Instead, Kohaku suggests they go shopping for clothes. Yui tries to decline, but Kohaku admits that he wants to see her in different outfits. Feeling irritated, she insists that they should just go to the movies, but Kohaku grabs her arm and drags her along to go shopping. At the clothing store, the sales lady is visibly impressed by how good Yui looks in her new clothes. Yui checks herself in the mirror, surprised by the kind of shop Kohaku brought her to. Moments later, Kohaku steps out as well, and even Yui finds herself impressed by how stylish and handsome he looks. Kohaku notices her and her new outfit. He eagerly tries to coax her to face him so he can get a better look at her. When Yui tries to dig for an explanation, Kohaku explains that he wanted to try matching with her today. He casually plucks her glasses off and pulls her closer, trying to make her look at the mirror as he tells her that they actually look good together. He then pulls away with a smile, apologizing for touching her shoulder. Yui is left even more confused. Normally, a guy would take a girl to buy cuter clothes, and if he wanted to match, they should have bought couple outfits instead. She looks at herself and notes that what she's wearing doesn't really feel like something meant for a date. She also becomes aware of how strange her shoulder feels where his hand had been. They leave the store in their original clothes, which disappoints Kohaku a little since Yui decided not to buy anything. A traditional Japanese sweets shop catches Yui's attention, and Kohaku notices. He suggests that they go inside and buy some treats. Once inside, Yui marvels at all the sweets as she carefully decides what to get. They end up sitting on a bench at the park with sweet rice dumplings and round rice cakes. They each take a bite of their chosen sweets and are immediately pleased with the flavor. Yui excitedly begins explaining how delicious her round rice cake is, saying that its smooth texture is what makes it so good. Kohaku admits that he has trouble relating, as he's never really paid much attention to how texture affects flavor. This only makes Yui grow more passionate as she continues explaining. Kohaku bluntly remarks that she must have a sweet tooth, but Yui quickly denies it. When he asks what her favorite snacks are, she starts listing various sweet foods, even admitting that she likes her toast with butter and condensed milk. This only confirms Kohaku's point. He breaks into a soft chuckle, amused by the fact that Yui doesn't seem aware of it herself. Yui, meanwhile, is caught off guard by how beautiful his face looks when he smiles. Something inside her warms, and she realizes she's happy. Later on, they decide to try one more place, and Kohaku brings her to an amusement park. He immediately heads for the ticket counter, surprising Yui with how naturally he thought of bringing her somewhere like this. They ride a cable car, and Kohaku shares that he likes how scenic amusement parks are in the evening. Yui replies that she understands how he feels, explaining that she prefers the taste of ice cream during the winter. Kohaku smiles, amused as her love for sweets shows again, and tells Yui that people often don't know themselves as well. Yui asks if Kohaku's dates are usually like this, and he admits that this is actually the first time he's done things the way they did today. He explains that when he goes out with girls, he usually just does whatever his date wants because he doesn't have much interest in anything. Kohaku even admits that today was the first time he tried on clothes in a store, since he normally just wears whatever people give him. He then thanks Yui for the date, saying it's the first time he's genuinely had fun on one. Yui finds herself mesmerized by how beautiful Kohaku looks, especially with the lights outlining him and making him appear almost ethereal. She hesitantly admits that she felt a little disappointed by how he replied to her message the night before, saying it sounded dismissive and made her feel like a burden. Kohaku looks surprised, realizing that he had hurt her. He explains that he was actually excited and responded right away, since he usually just leaves messages on read. Hearing his explanation, Yui feels heat creep up her cheeks. When the ride ends, Kohaku suggests that they head home, and the two begin walking together. Yui wonders if this really marks the end of their date, feeling as though it ended on a low note. To her surprise, Kohaku suggests that they eat before going home. They overhear people talking about a dumpling place, and Yui admits that dumplings sound good. Kohaku suggests following them. He smiles, thinking that ending a date with dumplings feels unique. However, Yui suddenly gets called in to report to work because the restaurant is understaffed. She apologizes, and they decide to head to the curry restaurant. Yui is about to invite Kohaku to dinner when her father notices them. Her father recognizes Kohaku, and Kohaku casually admits that they're dating now. Her father becomes excited and asks Kohaku what made him fall for Yui. Kohaku answers honestly, saying it's her looks and that he wants the chance to see her every day. This response somehow irritates Yoi, and she slams the door behind her as she enters the curry restaurant. The next day, she talks about her date with her friends, admitting that she actually had fun, which surprises even herself. Realizing what she just confessed, Yoi decides not to lie about her feelings and repeats that she truly enjoyed spending time with Kohaku. Still, she feels uncertain about whether what they have can be called love, especially since Kohaku admitted that his attraction started with her face. She spots Kohaku outside the window, where he gestures to greet her, but she responds by pulling the curtains closed. Kohaku looks troubled by her reaction. Later, as Yoi walks to class with her friends, he pulls her aside to an empty classroom, immediately asking what he did to upset her. Yoi tells him that he shouldn't have told her father about them dating, but Kohaku counters that they were outside of school, so the contract doesn't apply. Yoi admits that there's a chance they aren't really dating at all, since neither of them is truly in love. She confronts him, saying that all he's told her so far is that he likes her face. Kohaku points out that the purpose of their experiment is to figure out what love is. For some reason, this unsettles Yoi, and she grows irritated when he casually offers her some sweet snacks. She pushes him away and runs off, leaving Kohaku surprised. However, Kohaku is more intrigued by the expression she just made than by her reaction itself. Yoi tries to pinpoint when she began caring about Kohaku this much. She wonders if it started during yesterday's date, or perhaps in the moment they shared at the nurse's office. Regardless, she comes to the realization that she now genuinely wants Kohaku to fall in love with her. Later, in one of his friend's rooms, Shun notices the sweets in Kohaku's bag and finds it strange, since Kohaku doesn't usually carry snacks around. After learning that Kohaku no longer needs them, Shun decides to take the sweets for himself. He then asks Kohaku why he's interested in Yoi. Kohaku disappoints him at first by saying that he's mainly attracted to Yoi's face. Still, he admits that he doesn't fully understand his own feelings either, but he's noticed that he can't seem to look away whenever he sees her. Thinking about it further, Kohaku adds that even if Yoi were a boy, he believes he would feel the same way. As Kohaku calls himself a Yoi enthusiast, Sentaro suggests that what he's experiencing might actually be love at first sight. Kohaku considers this possibility and asks his friends whether he's always gushing about Yoi. Shun clarifies that it's not that he gushes. They feel ignored more often whenever Yoi is involved. Sentaro adds that Yoi is very different from the girls Kohaku usually dates, which makes him think Kohaku may actually be seriously in love. When Kohaku asks if they're certain about that, both friends admit they don't have much experience with love themselves, but they believe Kohaku will figure it out in time. Meanwhile, in her room, Yoi agonizes over her earlier outburst toward Kohaku, realizing how pathetic she must have sounded. She worries that he might think poorly of her now and wonders if she should have acted cuter instead, since she is female and his girlfriend. In the end, she resolves that she will apologize to him properly tomorrow. The next day, Yoi goes through her classes as usual, though something feels slightly off. By the time lunch arrives, she realizes that Kohaku hasn't come to pester her at all that day, and for some reason that bothers her. Her friends notice the annoyed expression on her face and tease her about it. Meanwhile, Kohaku is having lunch in his own classroom, which surprises his friends. More students begin crowding around him, urging him to hang out with them since he rarely eats with others. However, Kohaku is unwilling to move, claiming his leg is feeling off. Suddenly, someone tells Kohaku that Yoi is waiting to seek him at the door. The moment he spots her, he immediately stands up to meet her. His friends give him strange looks because he had been complaining about his leg hurting just moments earlier. When Kohaku reaches Yoi, he doesn't even try to hide the eagerness in his voice as he greets her. Yoi suddenly feels nervous, aware that everyone in the room is watching them. Noticing her discomfort, Kohaku pulls Yoi to a quieter, empty area of the school so they can talk privately. Yoi admits that she had been wondering whether what she said the day before had upset him. When Kohaku tells her that it didn't bother him at all, Yoi feels another wave of disappointment wash over her. Kohaku suddenly brings up gyoza, saying he's been craving it ever since their date, since they never got to eat any. When he invites her to have gyoza with him later, Yoi immediately agrees, telling him she can finish work by 7 p.m. Kohaku leaves after promising to message her later so they can go together. Yoi is surprised at herself. She had been feeling down earlier, but now she feels happy that Kohaku asked her out to eat. Later that evening, Kohaku brings her to a nearby gyoza restaurant and even recommends which dish she should try, since he frequents the restaurant. After they place their order, Yoi admits that she's a little nervous because she doesn't eat out very often. Kohaku shares that he eats at restaurants frequently since he doesn't know how to cook at all, even mentioning that he can never boil rice properly. This reminds Yoi that she recently learned he lives on his own. She was about to ask him more about it when Shun and Sentaro suddenly spot them and greet them as they walk into the restaurant. They immediately start teasing Kohaku, then ask if they can join them, since Sentaro had been hoping for a chance to talk to Yoi. Kohaku refuses, which surprises Yoi. As Shun drags Sentaro away, Yoi is still trying to sort out her feelings about what Kohaku said. Then Shun calls out to her and apologizes for eating the snacks Kohaku had bought for her. Yoi is surprised all over again upon realizing that Kohaku had bought something for her, while Kohaku looks annoyed at his friends for meddling. Soon after, their food is served and Yoi's eyes light up at the spread before her. Still, she can't help but feel self-conscious under Shun and Sentaro's lingering gazes. Noticing this, Kohaku decides to sit closer beside her, effectively blocking his friend's view of her. Kohaku scolds them for staring at her, and Yoi feels overwhelmed by how close they are. Kohaku asks if she's okay. She tells him that she is, but admits she's nervous because she isn't used to being this close to a man. She feels embarrassed about saying this out loud, but Kohaku confesses that he's feeling nervous too. Smoothly, he takes her hand beneath the table. At that moment, two girls enter the restaurant and begin gossiping about them, assuming they are a gay couple because of Yoi's masculine appearance. Startled, Yoi quickly pulls her hand away and turns her face away from him, insisting that they should eat before the food gets cold. After the meal, they walk home together with Kohaku slightly ahead of her. He tries to make small talk about the Gyoza place, and although Yoi responds at first, her thoughts immediately drift elsewhere. She knows that what she did back in the restaurant could have strained their relationship, yet Kohaku seems to be acting completely normal. She wonders if she's just overthinking everything. Kohaku turns to face her and admits that he's been thinking about his feelings ever since she confronted him the day before. Scratching the back of his neck, he confesses that he isn't sure about his feelings himself and apologizes. Yoi refuses to look at him, a frown forming on her face as she feels a quiet sense of disappointment at his answer. Suddenly, Kohaku steps closer to her and asks if he can do something. He leans in until their lips are almost touching. To his surprise, Yoi doesn't pull away. Hovering close to her lips, he asks again if she's really sure. It finally registers in Yoi's mind what is happening, so she pushes him back and quickly covers her mouth. Kohaku misreads this and assumes she's worried about his breath after eating gyoza. Still recovering from what she almost let happen, Yoi accepts the piece of gum Kohaku offers her. He then holds out his hand, suggesting they walk the rest of the way home together, admitting that he enjoyed holding her hand earlier at the restaurant. To hide how she really feels, Yoi pretends to be annoyed, reminding him that they agreed not to do overly romantic things during their experiment. Kohaku points out that she seemed ready to let him kiss her just now, which makes Yoi snap back that she was only frozen in shock. She then complains that it makes no sense for him to hold her hand when he isn't even sure about his feelings for her. Kohaku explains that he wants to test and understand his emotions by doing different things with her, since this is his first platonic relationship. Yoi thinks back on everything they've done together so far and realizes that none of it has ever felt platonic to her. He wipes his hand and tries again, promising that he won't push her if she turns him down this time. Instead of outright refusing, Yoi voices her worry about being mistaken for two men dating again. Kohaku responds by gently grabbing her wrist and telling her that he doesn't really care what other people think. They begin walking home hand in hand. Yoi notices how warm Kohaku's hand feels and starts wondering if the rest of him feels the same. Later, while taking a bath, Yoi reflects on her feelings for Kohaku. She used to hate him, but now she finds herself slowly growing fond of his presence. Still, she is certain of one thing. She wants Kohaku to fall in love with her and openly admit it. She knows this desire is selfish and self-serving, but it's what she truly wants. When she finally steps out of the bath, her sister notices her. Her sister tries to talk to her, but Yoi is too lost in thought, wondering whether or not she should message Kohaku. She hears her sister ask if she has a boyfriend, which causes Yoi to drop her phone. She quickly corrects her, insisting that she and Kohaku aren't official yet. Yoi's sister gives her a knowing smile and remarks that she could tell something was different, noting how Yoi has been acting lately. She also points out that Yoi's expression has become much softer. Yoi reflects on this and realizes that her friends had noticed the same thing. Her sister leans in closer and asks what kind of person Kohaku is. Yoi explains the basics, mentioning that he is a year older than her. She adds that he also shares the same nickname as the school's prince. Her sister is surprised that there is a boy with that title and wonders if Kohaku must be a gentleman. She concludes that a well-mannered prince would be a good match for Yoi, and that his taste in girls must be excellent. Yoi doesn't say it aloud, but she doesn't really see Kohaku as prince-like at all. Still, she admits that some of the things he said earlier did sound like something a prince would say. Meanwhile, Kohaku stares at his chat thread with Yoi, thinking back to their almost kiss. He smiles to himself, realizing that if Yoi hadn't stopped him, he would have kissed her without hesitation. The next day in the locker room, Kohaku and his friends spot Yoi. Shun is the first to greet her, but Yoi finds herself unable to face Kohaku. She makes up an excuse about needing to do something and rushes off, much to Shun and Sentaro's surprise. Later, Yui cautiously moves around the school, trying not to run into Kohaku, but he notices her behavior. He manages to catch up to her and gently confronts her about it. Yui refuses to admit that she's avoiding him because she can't face him. While she's caught in her thoughts, Kohaku reaches out to pick something from her neck, but Yui instinctively swats his hand away. He shows her that it was just a strand of her hair, and Yui feels embarrassed by her reaction. Kohaku asks if she thought he was going to try to kiss her again. He tells her to relax, assuring her that he won't do anything she doesn't want. This makes Yui pause because she isn't actually sure that she would dislike it if he did kiss her. Realizing she isn't entirely against the idea, she reaches out to stop him just as he's about to leave. She looks like she's about to confess something, but they suddenly hear her friends calling for her. She quickly excuses herself and runs toward them. When she reaches Kotobuki, she collapses into her arms, making her friends worry that she might be sick. Yui agonizes over her own feelings. She has never felt this overwhelming surge of hope before, and it unsettles her since she doesn't want to fall in love with him. Meanwhile, Kohaku is equally shaken. His heart had raced the moment Yui reached out to him with that hopeful look. He tries his best to compose himself, amazed that Yui can stir such a reaction from him. Later that evening, a student named Takudo calls Yui's diner to inquire about the part-time position. During their PE basketball class, Yui impresses all the girls with her skills. Her friends watch from the sidelines, joking that her princely powers have fully activated. Throughout the day, they can't help but notice that Yui seems even more perfect in her prince role than usual, to the point that they feel something must be going on. At lunch, while Yui is lining up to get a drink, her friends decide to ask if something is wrong. Yui is confused at first, but then overhears another student mention gyoza. The word immediately reminds her of her near kiss with Kohaku, and she quickly excuses herself. Her friends are now convinced that something definitely happened. She ends up in the courtyard where she notices some girls struggling to retrieve a shuttlecock. Yui effortlessly reaches up to get it for them. This princely act draws the attention of nearby students who begin gossiping about her, especially her male-like appearance. For a moment, Yui feels a familiar sense of normalcy return, but when she overhears girls talking about Kohaku, she immediately starts blushing again, painfully aware that something inside her has truly changed since meeting him. She starts lightly hitting her own head, trying to shake the thoughts away, and even wishes she could erase the memories from his mind as well. Meanwhile, Kohaku is having lunch on the rooftop with his friends. They wonder aloud why he hasn't gone to bother Yui and speculate that he must have done something to upset her again. Kohaku acknowledges their question but admits he isn't sure if he actually upset her or not. He recalls their last meeting and can't help but wonder what might have happened if they hadn't been interrupted. He realizes that this is the first time someone has occupied his thoughts for this long. He reflects that dating used to feel much simpler in the past, even when it ended in heartbreak. He would move on quickly or lose interest just as fast, simply finding someone else to entertain him. But with Yui, he feels unusually sentimental. As he continues thinking about her, he finds himself getting strangely excited, only to be snapped back to reality when his friends remind him that lunch break is almost over. By the time school ends, Kotobuki looks a little disappointed that Kohaku never showed up, though Yui insists that it's actually a good thing. Nobara then points out that Yui tends to act less princely whenever Kohaku is around. This makes her friends realize that Yui's extra prince behavior today is likely because Kohaku wasn't there, since she becomes noticeably more girly in his presence. Yui snaps at them, which surprises even herself, so she quickly apologizes, and her friends apologize back for crossing a line. She trudges home alone, quietly reasoning that she reacted that way because she isn't used to being called girly. Being called something other than a prince suddenly feels embarrassing and foreign. She admits to herself that she had been hoping Kohaku would do something yesterday, but immediately hits her head again to shake the thought away. She recalls her older sister saying that someone more prince-like than her might make a good match and wonders if that could be true. Then again, this is also the first time a man has ever shown interest in her, so maybe she only sees him as a good match because he is available to her. If that were the case, then perhaps she would be fine with anyone who showed interest in her, not just Kohaku. Suddenly, Takudo steps out of the curry restaurant. Their eyes meet for a brief moment before they exchange a respectful bow. Takudo then walks off in another direction, leaving Yui wondering if she has met him somewhere before. The next day, while studying in the library for a class, Yui's friends talk about hanging out after school. Yui declines, explaining that she asked for extra hours at work so she can stay busy and distracted. Soon after, a teacher asks the librarian if his class can also use the library. When permission is granted, murmurs spread among the students as they notice it is Kohaku's class. Kohaku immediately spots Yui, and the two lock eyes for a moment before Yui quickly looks away. Her friends tease her, while Kohaku's friends rib him about seeing Yui again after so long. Shun tries to convince Kohaku to go talk to her, but Kohaku decides it's better not to bother her while she's studying. Noticing him begin to walk away, Yui glances in his direction, finding it strange that he doesn't try to approach her. She tells herself to focus, reminding herself that she was the one who set the rule that he shouldn't disturb her at school. Still, she can't help feeling a cloud of disappointment settle in her chest. Yue hides her face behind her notes so she can steal another glance at Kohaku, while her mind spirals over her feelings. Her friends notice but choose not to question her. She sneaks another look, and this time he catches her. She quickly turns away, only to notice that Kohaku has sent her a message. Opening it, she sees that he asked if something is wrong. She looks up at him again, and he turns toward her, meets her gaze, and gives her a gentle smile. She types back that she's distracted by his presence, then hurriedly adds that it feels like a parent is watching her. Her reply makes him burst into laughter loud enough that a teacher calls his attention. After composing himself, he texts her back, telling her to stop making him laugh. When she starts to smile, he tries to invite her on a date later, but she replies that she has work, effectively ending their exchange. After some time, Yue's class is dismissed, and they begin leaving the library. Yue lingers near the door for a moment, and when Kohaku notices her, she raises her hand in a small goodbye before stepping out. Kohaku looks bewildered, but Sentaro has the biggest reaction as his face turns bright red. Kohaku scolds him loudly, and the commotion is heard by Yue and her friends outside. Yue turns back just in time to catch Kohaku smiling before silently mouthing to her that they'll go out another time. Yue is stunned as warmth spreads across her chest, and she quietly admits to herself that she likes Kohaku's sweet smile. After school, during her commute home, Yue checks her message thread with Kohaku. He hasn't contacted her since the library. She remembers him saying that he isn't much of a planner, which makes her wonder where he even intended to take her. Her thoughts keep drifting back to Kohaku when she suddenly notices a girl a short distance away who looks visibly troubled. Yue is about to approach her, but a man beats her to it. Impressed that he noticed, she looks more closely and realizes it's Takuto, the same person who left her family's curry restaurant the other day. When Yue gets off the train, Takuto happens to disembark at the same station. Even more suspiciously, she realizes he's heading toward her family's restaurant again. As he opens the door, Yue's father is the first to greet him, but he's surprised when he sees Yue standing right behind Takuto. Takuto looks back and sees Yue looking panicked about the situation as she slowly offers a greeting. After things settle, Yue's father apologizes for delaying the introduction and formally introduces the two of them, explaining that Takuto is the new part-timer at the restaurant. Both Yue and her father are momentarily struck by Takuto's presence when he bows politely in greeting. Work begins, and Takuto easily charms the customers as he moves through the floor. The regulars teasingly remark that Yue's father must be starting an idol agency since he now has two handsome servers working for him. They also note that Takuto seems to live up to his last name, which means prince in Japanese. Yue watches him closely, and true enough, he does appear more traditionally prince-like than Kohaku. She then realizes that Takuto has forgotten to bring drinks to a table of girls. Before the girls can complain, Yue steps in and serves them herself, instantly winning them over with her demeanor. Takuto apologizes, but the girls cut in to say how good he and Yue look together, joking that it feels like they're being served by two princes. Yue handles the compliment smoothly, while Takuto quietly continues to observe her. Later in the supply room, Takuto approaches Yue and asks about her nickname. She explains that people often mistake her for a guy because of her masculine appearance. Takuto admits that he understands the feeling since people frequently tease him about his last name and expect him to be dependable. Because of that, the prince nickname has caused him trouble since he actually makes plenty of mistakes. Yue insists that he truly lives up to his name, reminding him that she saw him earlier step in to protect a girl from a man who seemed ready to harm her. Takuto is visibly taken aback by her words. Suddenly, he tells her that he has always thought of her as a pretty girl, not a prince. Yue freezes for a moment. The comment reminds her of how Kohaku called her beautiful during their first meeting, and she feels her face heat up. Takuto panics, worried he may have offended her, and quickly explains that he came from an all-boys school, so he's very used to distinguishing girls when he sees them. Despite her blushing, Yue tells him that she doesn't mind the compliment, though her thoughts keep drifting back to Kohaku's compliment instead. Meanwhile, Kohaku has returned to his main house, much to his mother's surprise, since she hadn't expected him back so soon. He explains that he only came to retrieve some clothes. His mother hands him several bags filled with designer outfits from his uncle. Kohaku is mildly uneasy about this, but his mother insists that his uncle wants him to have them, as dressing Kohaku up has apparently become a personal hobby. As she starts to ramble about it, Kohaku quickly packs everything and announces that he's leaving. Before returning to his other house, he stops by a convenience store where he overhears a group of girls talking about him. On impulse, he joins their conversation, joking that his grandfather is incredibly rich because he's a descendant of Thomas Edison. When they stare at him in utter confusion, he grins boyishly and admits he was just kidding. Instead of being offended, the girls feel their hearts skip a beat at how effortlessly handsome he is. Kohaku lightly pats one of them on the shoulder and tells them to focus on their studies instead of getting caught up in rumors before casually walking away. After he leaves, the girls excitedly talk among themselves, agreeing that he was unbelievably cool. As he walks home, everything around him suddenly feels dull. His thoughts drift back to his past, and the world seems drained of color until Yui unexpectedly appears before him. Instantly, everything feels vivid again. He offers her one of his snacks, learning that she's just finished her shift at work. As they walk together, Kohaku recalls that he was eating the same snack when they first met. Yui is surprised that he remembers such a small detail. He admits that he remembers that day clearly because she struck him as mysterious. Yui immediately shoots back that he's the mysterious one. Kohaku insists that he has always been obvious, then adds that he's surprised by how things turned out, and that he's actually dating her now. Yui thinks to herself that that should be her line. As they continue walking, a speeding car suddenly rushes past, bringing them close enough that their hands are almost touching. Yui hesitates, wondering whether she should take his hand, but before she can decide, Kohaku firmly intertwines his fingers with hers. He then invites her to go to the local summer festival with him. Adjusting her grip on his hand, Yui accepts. Kohaku immediately brightens and asks her to wear a yukata. She flatly refuses, saying she doesn't even own one. Undeterred, Kohaku begins scrolling on his phone, apparently looking for auctions online. Yui reaches out to grab his phone in protest, but Kohaku catches her hand instead, smirking as he tells her he's just kidding because she already looks good in anything she wears. Yui shoots him an accusatory look and calls him a flirt. They start bickering playfully as they walk. Their hands remain linked as they continue home together. Yui quietly begins thinking about what she should wear to the festival while also remembering that their experiment won't last forever. She wonders what will happen to them when it ends. One day, Yui tells her friends about her plans to attend the summer festival with Kohaku. They're shocked at first but quickly become excited and genuinely happy for her. Yui tries to invite them to come along, but they immediately decline, insisting that the summer festival should just be for her and her boyfriend. They then remind her that the trial dating period is almost over, which means Yui will soon have to decide what happens to their relationship afterward. Meanwhile, Kohaku and his friends are taking a short break from PE. They talk about their own summer festival plans when Kohaku casually announces that he'll be going with Yui. Sentaro looks slightly crestfallen upon hearing that Kohaku already has a date, and Shun points out that the trial dating period is nearly finished. Kohaku shrugs it off, saying he doesn't want to think about that right now. But Sentaro jokingly adds that Yui has been attracting more attention from guys lately, so it wouldn't be surprising if someone else tried to steal her away someday. But Sentaro laughs it off as a joke. Kohaku is secretly irritated. He roughly grabs and stretches Sentaro in retaliation, masking his irritation with playful actions. Later that evening at the restaurant, Yui's father notices business is slow. Deciding it's safe to step away for a bit, he allows Yui and Takuto to take their dinner break together. They sit down to eat the staff meal, a special curry prepared just for them. Takuto happily comments that he never gets tired of the curry there, and admits that one of the main reasons he took the job was for the free food. As they eat, he notices Yui's drink and realizes he's unfamiliar with it. Yui explains that it's a lassi. Takuto then asks if she likes sweets since the drink contains yogurt. Yui is about to deny it out of habit, but then remembers that Kohaku once pointed out her sweet tooth. So instead, she awkwardly admits that she recently discovered she does, in fact, like sweets. Takuto finds her phrasing amusing and calls her interesting before returning to his meal. After a brief pause, Yui shyly asks whether yukatas are something men like seeing. Takuto looks surprised by the question. Yui quickly tries to cover herself, claiming it's actually her friend who's worried about how she might look in one. Takuto considers this before answering honestly. He says that personally, he'd feel happy if a girl dressed up for him at a festival. He adds that most guys would probably feel the same since it's the effort that makes it special. Blushing slightly, Yui thanks him for the advice and promises to tell her friend what he said. Takuto decides to shoot a shot and asks Yui if she's planning to go to the summer festival with someone. Yui turns to him in surprise, but before she can answer, her father returns, startling both of them. She's secretly grateful for the interruption, unsure of how she would have responded. Her father then reveals that he picked up some customers during his walk, and to Yui's shock, Kohaku and his friends walk into the restaurant. She questions why they're there. Kohaku casually explains that Sentaro was craving curry, though he personally thought coming might upset her. Then he notices Takuto and steps closer, eyeing him, and asks Yui when a good-looking guy like Takuto started working at the restaurant. Yui immediately scolds Kohaku for bothering him, explaining that Takuto is their new part-timer before guiding Takuto back behind the counter. Kohaku's friends each place a hand on his shoulder and dramatically remark that love is fleeting before heading to their seats. Kohaku brushes it off at first, but then realizes that Takuto's presence genuinely bothers him. Earlier, he had seen Takuto through the restaurant window. He'd also noticed how unusually shy and happy Yui looked while talking to him. When Yui comes to take their order, Kohaku can't stop staring at her. She eventually asks what his problem is. Breezily, he replies that she's too beautiful not to stare at, stunning not only Yui but nearly everyone within earshot. Later, as Yui relays the order to the kitchen, Takuto notices something near her ear. As Yui struggles to find it, Takuto reaches out to gently wipe it away, realizing it's yogurt. Yui and Takuto quickly figure out it must be from the lassi she drank earlier. Seeing them so naturally in sync makes something twist uncomfortably inside Kohaku, so he suddenly knocks over his water to stop them from conversing. Yui rushes over to clean it up, and Takuto watches the scene closely, sensing tension. As Yui bends to wipe the spill, Kohaku places his hand over hers and quietly admits that he spilled it on purpose. Yui stiffens, then quickly stands, fighting down her blush. She demands that he come outside to talk to her. Once outside, Yui demands to know what his sudden attitude is about, even threatening to ban him from the restaurant. Kohaku avoids her gaze, muttering an apology under his breath, which only irritates her more. Kohaku casually remarks that Takuto is really handsome. Yui finds the comment strange coming from him and questions it. Kohaku shrugs, saying it's just an observation and revealing that he saw them talking when he walked in. He subtly tries to coax her into sharing what they were discussing, but Yui refuses to tell him anything. Instead, she points out that he's been acting strange. She doesn't admit to feeling confused and lost over his attitude, so she's completely caught off guard when Kohaku bluntly admits that he's simply jealous. He lightly taps her head before heading back into the restaurant. Once inside, he excuses himself to the bathroom. The moment he's alone, he finally lets out his frustration, annoyed at both the situation and himself. Outside, Yui remains frozen. Slowly, she slides down against the wall as his words sink in. When she returns to work, she finds it hard to concentrate. Her gaze keeps drifting toward Kohaku, who appears perfectly normal as he chats with his friends. Throughout the rest of the meal, he doesn't look at her even once, and that unsettles her. Her father calls out to her, snapping her from her thoughts. Startled, she nearly drops the glass she's cleaning, but Takuto quickly catches it. He lightly starts talking to her, but Yui feels increasingly self-conscious, worried that Kohaku might overhear them. Suddenly, Kohaku stands up and tells his friends they should get going since they're finished eating anyway. When they leave, Yui instinctively runs after him. Once she catches up, she calls out and bows deeply, formally thanking them for dining at the restaurant. Kohaku simply lifts a hand in a casual goodbye. Sentaro and Shun offer their own slightly awkward farewells, leaving Yui standing confused and alone on the street. Later, Kohaku and his friends stop by a convenience store for dessert. Sentaro comments that Kohaku seemed a little cold toward Yui back at the restaurant. Even Shun agrees, and they begin speculating that he might have been jealous. Sentaro pushes further, teasing him relentlessly, until Kohaku suddenly grabs his wrist to stop him from slapping his back. Without another word, Kohaku heads to the counter to pay for his items. Sentaro and Shun shoot wary looks at Kohaku. They never thought they'd see Kohaku genuinely angry or jealous. Later that evening, Yui scrolls through her messages with Kohaku. Their conversation had been lighthearted and warm, a complete contrast to his earlier cold goodbye. She wonders if there was something she should have said back then, but she'd been too caught off guard by his jealousy to respond properly. Her sister comes home and is surprised to find Yui sitting alone in the dark living room. She switches on the light and casually asks if Yui's boyfriend is Takuto. Yui quickly denies it, which shocks her sister because she had only assumed it was him since Yui mentioned her boyfriend was also called Prince and Takuto's surname coincidentally means prince. Irritated, Yui explains that she isn't even officially dating the guy she's seen because she still can't fully trust him. She describes Kohaku as someone with a shifty personality, comparing him to a fox. This puzzles her sister, who thought Kohaku was supposed to be prince-like. Yui admits that neither of them is even sure about their feelings. She explains that although Kohaku has said he loves her, he always frames it around her looks. Her sister looks incredulous. She argues that there's nothing wrong with Kohaku falling in love with her appearance and that Yui is allowed to fall for him too. She emphasizes that dating isn't something to overanalyze, rather it's something you sometimes just have to go with the flow. She then questions whether Yui's heart flutters for people other than Kohaku. Since Yui doesn't answer, her sister gently tells her that while it's okay to be cautious, being too afraid might become her downfall. With that, she leaves Yui alone with her thoughts. The next day at school, during home economics class, Yui accidentally sifts too much flour. Realizing her mistake makes her panic, which only causes her to make more errors. By the end, only one muffin looks presentable. She carries it out of class, apologizing to her friends for being distracted. They'd assume she's simply excited about the summer festival. But in truth, Yui is worried about whether Kohaku even still wants to go with her. Kotobuki jokingly asks if she plans to give her one good muffin to Kohaku. As they tease her, they imagine him stubbornly rejecting their suggestion. Instead, Yui grows thoughtful and announces that she is going to give the muffin to Kohaku, shocking them. After class, Yui heads to the upperclassmen's floor and asks around for Kohaku. A student tells her that he was called to the staff room because of an incident during lunch break. As the students walk away, she overhears them complimenting her looks. Strangely, their praise feels normal, different from how Kohaku makes her feel. Before she realizes it, her feet carry her toward the staff room. Her mind catches up too late, and just as she's about to turn back, she spots Kohaku at the bottom of the staircase. They're equally surprised to see each other. Flustered, Yui tries to make an excuse for being on the upperclassmen's floor. In her distraction, she missteps and nearly falls, but Kohaku catches her in time. Once she regains her balance, they quickly pull apart. Embarrassed, Yui thanks him. Kohaku presses her about why she's there. Before she can answer, his friends call out to him, unaware that he's talking to Yui. They complain about how much time he is taking. Kohaku turns to leave with them, but suddenly, Yui blurts out and asks if they can walk home together. Unable to refuse her, he goes over to his friends and tells them to head home without him. Then he returns to Yui and agrees. Standing in front of him, Yui quietly wonders if she only feels this way around Kohaku. As they walk, she asks why he was called to the staff room. He admits he was scolded for sneaking off school grounds to buy a beef bowl. Thinking about it, Yui realizes that does sound like something Kohaku would do. He jokingly says he wishes he had magic so he could sneak out more easily. Yui counters that if he had magic, he could just make a beef bowl appear in front of him. Kohaku stops mid-step, staring at her in realization, and calls her a genius. For a moment, Yui notices that they're talking normally again. Gathering her courage, she prepares to give him the muffin she made, but her phone suddenly rings. Takuto is on the other line, and he explains that he might be late to his shift because of delays at the train station. After she ends the call, Kohaku's mood visibly shifts. He comments that she exchanged numbers with Takuto, but Yui defends that it was necessary for work. Kohaku mutters that he doesn't like it and that Takuto clearly likes her. Yui argues that he doesn't, though Kohaku is pretty sure that he does. She decides to point out that Kohaku himself has plenty of girls' numbers in his phone. Without hesitation, Kohaku starts deleting the numbers in front of her. Yui protests, saying he doesn't have to do that. Instead, she asks him to stop announcing when he's jealous because she doesn't know how to respond to it. Kohaku suddenly raises his voice, snapping that he's not used to being jealous either. The moment the words leave his mouth, he realizes he shouted. He quickly apologizes and resumes walking. Yui stands there, watching his retreating back, and her sister's words echo in her mind. One day at the mall, Kohaku arrives to meet his friends, but only finds Shun waiting for him. Since Sentaro hasn't arrived yet, the two of them decide to pass the time window shopping. While browsing inside an eyeglass shop, Shun tries to casually ask about Kohaku's upcoming summer festival date with Yui. However, Kohaku doesn't seem excited anymore. He admits that he hasn't even contacted Yui about it. He goes further, confessing that he has a feeling he and Yui might decide not to continue their relationship once the trial period ends. Sentaro finally shows up and immediately senses the heavy mood. Kohaku tells him he was just explaining to Shun why he might not attend the summer festival after all. Sentaro is baffled and immediately tries to pry for more details since the original plan was a date with Yui, but Shun firmly cuts him off. Jumping to conclusions, Sentaro assumes that Kohaku and Yui broke up and dramatically declares that he'll treat Kohaku to a caramel frappuccino to cheer him up. On their way to the cafe, Sentaro suggests that Kohaku just hang out with them during the festival instead. When they arrive at the cafe, Sentaro goes ahead to buy the drinks, leaving Kohaku and Shun alone. Shun quietly asks if Kohaku is truly okay with not going to the festival with Yui. Kohaku insists that it's fine. He says he can always go back to how things were before, when they were strangers. Shun sees through him immediately. He points out that Yui was different and that Kohaku clearly developed real feelings for her. Before Kohaku can respond, Sentaro calls out for them to hurry. Shun heads inside first. Kohaku lingers behind for a moment. He pulls out his phone, hesitating as he considers sending Yui a message. But when Sentaro calls his name again, he slips his phone back into his pocket and follows them inside. Meanwhile, during a study session with her friends, Yui keeps glancing at her phone. She considers messaging Kohaku about tomorrow's date. However, halfway through typing, she suddenly drops her head onto the table in frustration, startling her friends. She insists she's fine, but Nobara and Kotobuki quickly notice that the muffin she baked for Kohaku is still sitting untouched in her bag. They gently offer to listen if something's wrong. Yui refuses their offer. She tells them this is something she needs to figure out on her own. Still, she promises that if things truly fall apart, she'll run to them first if they're still willing to help her. Her friends immediately assure her that they always will be. Nobara quickly suggests that she save the muffin as there may still be an opportunity to give it to him. Left alone with her thoughts, Yui reflects on her relationship with Kohaku. Over time, the distance between them had steadily closed, but the closer they became, the more she noticed how different they were. She had tried to bridge that gap, but it just never seemed to work. Later that night, Kohaku struggles to fall asleep. His thoughts drift back to the girls he used to date. One in particular comes to mind, a cute girl named Hasegawa. When they first got together, his friends had celebrated loudly, even teasing another guy who once had a crush on her. But Kohaku had known from the start that she was only using him. One afternoon, while he was casually chatting with another girl, she mentioned that Hasegawa had been bragging about how rich her boyfriend was. Kohaku had pretended to be surprised, but in truth, he had already overheard Hasegawa talking about him with a friend at a fast food restaurant. He had been mildly surprised by the tone she used, but not by the content. Being spoken about like a commodity wasn't new to him. In fact, even the girl walking beside him that day had been subtly trying to position herself as a better option. He knew she only wanted someone rich and handsome to show off. When she had offered to keep herself available for him if things went south with Hasegawa, he knew he was right. And it wasn't just those two. Every girl he had dated had been drawn to the status of being with Kohaku. All of them tried to look desirable to him so they could reap the benefits for their own selfish reasons. Once he saw his older brother, Ryu, genuinely heartbroken over a girl. Kohaku never understood that kind of attachment. For him, it had always been enough to get a small taste of affection before eventually growing bored. That was how things had always been for him. The next day, Roy helps out at her family's restaurant. Noticing that she isn't going to the festival with her usual group, her father casually asked about her plans. She explains that her friends are busy this year. As she works, she's painfully aware that she should have already contacted Kohaku to confirm their plans, but she's afraid that he might reject her. While she prepares herself to carry the supplies, Takuto comes over to help. They head to the storeroom together to put everything away. After a brief pause, Takuto gently asks what her friend decided about the summer festival. Yoi hesitates before answering that her friend decided not to go after all, admitting that she tends to be a bit of a coward. Yoi explains that her friend becomes especially timid around her crush because she's completely clueless when it comes to love or romance. Apparently, her friend became so obsessed with trying to figure out her feelings that she let her chance slip away. Takuto listens carefully before saying that he's fairly certain Yoi's friend was in love. He tells her that love is a very distinct feeling, and so is the fear that comes with it. According to him, one clear sign is when you always manage to find the person you love in a crowded place. Yoi immediately thinks of Kohaku and how her eyes always drift toward him. How she somehow always ends up spotting him, no matter how many people surround them. And how he once said that people are usually the most unaware of themselves. Her eyes widen as she realizes that she's been in love with Kohaku this entire time. Without another word, she thanks Takuto, rushes out to the dining area, and tells her father she's heading out. Both her father and Takuto are left confused as Yoi hurriedly removes her apron and runs out of the restaurant. Once outside, she quickly calls her friends to ask if any of them have a yukata she can borrow. Unfortunately, none of them do. Then Nobara suddenly remembers writing an article about a kimono rental shop. She immediately sends Yoi the address. Without hesitation, Yoi starts running toward it. A few hours later, the sky begins to darken. Kohaku and his friends are already at the festival grounds. Sentaro is brimming with excitement, eager to enjoy everything the festival has to offer. Suddenly, a group of girls from another class approaches them. Apparently, Shun had previously turned down their invitation to hang out, but seeing that the boys don't appear to have dates, they decide to try again. Sentaro agrees almost immediately. Shun, however, glances at Kohaku, quietly checking in since he knows things with Yoi still aren't settled. Kohaku insists it's fine. He tells Shun that he already asked Yoi about the festival, and she hasn't responded yet. To prove it, he pulls out his phone, only to realize he never actually sent the message. Shun scolds him, telling him to invite her properly while he still has battery left. Before he can type anything, one of the girls hooks her arm around his and insists they join them. Kohaku gently but firmly shrugs her off, apologizes, and suddenly takes off to look for a charging station. At the same time, Yoi arrives in front of the kimono rental shop, slightly out of breath. Just then, her phone vibrates and she sees a message from Kohaku. Yoi stares at the shop and feels a surge of determination rise inside her. Back with Kohaku, he grumbles under his breath, since the nearby store doesn't have a charging station. After a moment, he remembers there's another convenience store across from the festival grounds and decides to head there instead. While walking through the crowd, the girl from earlier spots him again and quickly catches up, trying once more to convince him to hang out with her. Kohaku does his best to turn her down politely, but she doesn't seem to understand the hint and continues trailing after him. Then, in the middle of the bustling crowd, he suddenly stops and his eyes land on Yoi. She's wearing a full kitsune mask, blending in with the festival goers, and yet he's absolutely certain it's her. He doesn't know when it started, but somewhere along the way he realized that as long as they're in the same place, his eyes will always find her without fail. To him, Yoi is special in a way he can't quite explain. He has never met a girl like her before, someone so beautiful and so endlessly interesting that just watching her makes his chest tighten. More than anything, he wants her to turn his way, to look at him, and to have eyes only for him. Before he can think twice, he shouts her name. Yui freezes, and when she turns and sees him standing beside another girl, she breaks into a run without hesitation. Kohaku immediately chases after her, leaving the confused girl behind. Yui doesn't stop until he finally catches up and grabs her arm. Out of breath, he asks why she ran, only for her to admit that she thought he was with someone else. The misunderstanding makes him sigh in frustration. Overwhelmed, Yui refuses to meet his eyes. She blurts out that she knows she can be a pain. She confesses that she doesn't have much experience with boys and that everything she's experienced with him has been a first, and the feelings she's been having are frightening her. She admits that she is afraid of looking easy, but more than anything, she is scared because she wants them to be something more, and she wants Kohaku to be completely infatuated with her. Kohaku slowly realizes that despite all her overthinking, what she's trying to say is actually very simple. Gently, he asks if she's trying to admit that she loves him. After a brief but heavy pause, Yui confirms it. Kohaku then tells her softly to remove her mask and look at him. Slowly, she turns to face him, and she lifts the mask away from her face. When the Kitsune mask comes off, her cheeks are burning red, yet her expression is steady and filled with determination. Without another word, Kohaku pulls her into a tight embrace and admits how happy he is. Pressed against him, the first thing Yui notices is how erratic his heart is and how much warmth radiates from his body. She begins to worry and gently suggests that they should pull away before he ends up with heatstroke, reasoning that they still have the festival ahead of them. But Kohaku is still caught in the moment and doesn't want it to end just yet. Reluctantly, he loosens his hold on her, only to lean down and press a lingering kiss against her neck. Then he pulls back just enough to lift her hand to his lips, brushing a soft kiss against the back of her hand. When he starts leaning in to kiss her properly, Yui suddenly brings both hands up between them, stopping him before their lips can meet. Flustered, she admits that she isn't ready for that yet. Kohaku calms himself. Instead of reacting poorly, he gives her a smile and tells her that they can cross that bridge when she's ready, and until then, he's more than willing to wait patiently. With that, he offers his hand and suggests that they simply enjoy the festival together, and they walk toward the festival grounds side by side. Just before they merge into the crowd, Kohaku mentions that they should probably avoid his friends for now since he isn't quite ready to explain everything yet. Kohaku glances at her and tells her she looks beautiful in her yukata, adding that seeing her dressed like that makes him happy. With his boyish smile never leaving his face, he gently tugs her forward toward the bright lights and lively sounds of the festival, and Yui finds herself smiling just as brightly beside him. After the festival, Yui lies in her bed as she replays everything that happened. That evening, while she was holding hands with Kohaku, she had wondered if their confession meant they were officially dating. She hadn't been able to put proper words to the feeling swelling inside her chest, but Kohaku had acted completely normal, even inviting her to eat before looking around some more. Yui was impressed by how quickly he managed to calm his nerves, whereas she was still processing her emotions. Her eyes drifted to their joined hands, and she wondered how long couples usually held hands. The moment she noticed the grilled corn stalled, she let go of him abruptly, pointing it out as she began rambling about food. Kohaku had noticed that it was an attempt to calm herself. They ended up eating all sorts of treats throughout the festival. They tried games and eventually watched the fireworks together. However, during the show, Kohaku's focus remained on her face. When it was time to head home, Kohaku offered his hand again. Yui tried to refuse, insisting that her hands were still sweaty. Kohaku took her hand anyway and told her that she would have to get used to holding hands. The way he said it made it impossible for her to argue, and she found herself quietly agreeing. Now, lying in her bed, Yui is just realizing that Kohaku really is her boyfriend. The thought makes her blush as she remembers how different he looked that evening. Her thoughts drift to her almost kiss with Kohaku, and she realizes that someday they will actually kiss. She suddenly sits up and realizes they might act differently at school. She begins imagining how smug and annoying Kohaku might be about it. The next day, during PE class, Yui finally tells her friends about her relationship with Kohaku. They react enthusiastically, thrilled that this is her first romantic relationship. Yui invites them to lunch so they can discuss everything in a better setting. Meanwhile, Kohaku's unusually good mood does not go unnoticed. His friends quickly point out how happy he seems and begin questioning him. Kohaku apologizes for ditching them during the festival before smugly announcing that he is currently dating Yui. Both of them are stunned. Sentaro immediately demands to know if he did something strange to her. Shun, on the other hand, congratulates him, which earns a genuine friendly response. Just then, Kohaku receives a message from Yui inviting him to have lunch in the old school building. When he arrives, he feels disappointed upon seeing that Yui's friends are also present. He decides to allow it this time, though he quietly hopes it won't become a regular occurrence. They hear a suspicious noise and spot Kohaku's friends attempting to spy on them. Kohaku tells them to leave, but Yoi surprises him by extending the lunch invitation to them. In the classroom, they form separate tables with a noticeable distance between the two groups. Kohaku can't help but comment that the setup feels like a formal meeting. Yoi explains that since they are dating, she thinks it's proper for everyone to become well acquainted. Unable to argue, Kohaku agrees to go along with her plan. Shun breaks the tension first by mentioning that he recognizes Nobara from an artwork she made that was displayed at the school entrance. Sentaro immediately shows interest and Nobara blushes under the attention. Seeing that the atmosphere is softened, Yoi decides to bring up the future of her relationship with Kohaku. A sense of dread settles over him as she pulls out another contract and begins reading more rules. Kohaku interrupts her, asking bluntly if they are really dating. Yoi blushes bright red as she confirms that they are. He doesn't understand why they need to hide it, so she explains that many people look up to him. Judging by her expression, that isn't the only thing bothering her. Even so, Kohaku agrees to go along with her plan, promising to read the contract properly later, though Yoi insists that he should read it now. As they begin to bicker, their friends get the impression that this is their strange way of flirting. Later, Yoi feels exasperated after everything. She finishes her assigned duties and heads toward the stairs, only to be surprised when she spots Kohaku waiting there. For a brief moment, she feels genuinely touched that he waited for her. But the feeling quickly deflates when he casually admits that he was actually in detention. Kohaku then invites her to walk home together. Yoi agrees, but she keeps a deliberate distance between them. When he questions it, she firmly reminds him that they must maintain at least a 2-kilometer distance from the school before acting familiar. Kohaku finds the rule ridiculous, yet he goes along with it. Yoi, on the other hand, feels a small sting of disappointment, though she reminds herself that she was the one who created the rules. After some distance, she asks why he was in detention. Kohaku answers vaguely at first, but Yoi remains persistent, so he admits he wanted the chance to be alone with her. He shyly admits that he's already completely infatuated with her. The words remind Yoi of her confession. Kohaku covers the lower half of his face with his hand, clearly embarrassed by how honest he's being. She suddenly calls his name, and gathering her courage, Yoi closes the distance between them and presses a quick kiss to his cheek. When she pulls away, her face is bright red as she shyly asks whether they should reconsider some of their rules. Kohaku covers his face again and grumbles that she took advantage of him while he was trying so hard to behave. Yoi blinks in confusion, unsure what he means. Kohaku lets it go, but he tells her that she needs to get used to the fact that they're together now. When he offers his hand, she finally takes it and promises she'll reconsider the walking home restrictions. The next day, after the closing ceremony, Yoi notices Kohaku heading toward the exit, but several girls approach him. Her friends catch her staring, nudging her teasingly. Even while surrounded, Kohaku manages to find her in the crowd and meets her eyes. The girls around him immediately squeal, assuming the gesture is meant for them. Yoi blushes, remembering how she once made a similar gesture. She covers part of her face, embarrassed by how quickly and deeply her feelings have grown. Later, while working at the restaurant, her father tells her she can clock out early. When she steps into another room, she notices a message from Kohaku asking her to let him know when she's finished. She ends up hurrying to meet him in front of a convenience store. From there, they visit a nearby park where Kohaku hands her a papago, declaring it a reward for successfully making it to summer vacation. As she enjoys the cold treat, Kohaku asks about her summer plans. Yoi explains that she'll be helping more at the restaurant and tutoring a neighbor's child. Kohaku admits he was hoping they could spend more time together. Her heart flutters again at the reminder, yet she tells him he doesn't need to go out of his way for her. Kohaku notices that Yoi seems to lack confidence in herself, though she believes it's normal. Kohaku decides not to press her on it and instead asks when she'll be free. Yoi pulls out her schedule and explains that weekdays are dedicated to work and weekends to tutoring. However, she mentions she might have 2 hours free in the mornings after exercising. Kohaku looks disappointed at first, but then quickly realizes she also has 2 full days free. He suddenly grabs her and asks her to reserve those 2 days for him. It doesn't take long for him to reveal that he wants to take her to Kobe. Kohaku reassures her that his family owns a villa there, so they don't have to worry about not having enough time. She immediately realizes he intends for them to stay at least one evening. Kohaku hurriedly adds that they would sleep in separate rooms, but Yoi refuses to budge. Seeing her resistance, he mentions how Kobe is famous for its Western sweets. After a moment of internal struggle, she shyly agrees on the condition that her friends can come. Kohaku laughs, amused at how quickly she caves at the mere mention of sweets. He tells her they can enjoy the Kobe trip as a group. Yoi is mildly surprised that he agreed so easily to her condition. Since it's getting late, Kohaku offers to walk her home. As he naturally steps ahead to lead the way, Yoi notices that ever since they started dating, he has begun treating her more like a girl. Kohaku suddenly turns back and tells her to hold still because a bug has landed on her shoulder. Yoi immediately begins flailing in panic until Kohaku grabs her firmly and flicks the bug away with ease. She stares at him afterward, oddly impressed. She can barely handle insects at all, yet he dealt with it so effortlessly. For a brief second, he looks undeniably cool. Realizing she's leaning into him, she quickly pushes herself away, but Kohaku simply pulls her back, telling her they're allowed to stay close now. Her face heats up as she reminds him they're in public. Kohaku mentions that it's too dark for anyone to notice them. After hesitating, Yoi cautiously allows herself to relax into his open arms. She finds herself unexpectedly comforted by his scent. Just as she begins to calm down, Kohaku suddenly cups her face and lightly bites her ear. Even Kohaku looks startled by his own actions. He immediately apologizes, admitting he acted on impulse, though Yoi is already backing away before running off. The next day, she invites her friends to Kobe. They immediately agree, and Kotobuki easily sees through her, pointing out that Yoi would have gone with Kohaku even if they hadn't joined. Yoi turns shy as her feelings are laid bare so bluntly. Kotobuki excitedly volunteers to help Yoi pick out cute outfits to impress Kohaku and drags her out shopping. They spend hours browsing. Eventually, Yoi finds a pair of clip-on earrings that resemble the ones Kohaku wears. She tries them on, instantly earning enthusiastic approval from her friends. Later, she rushes back to her family's restaurant, apologizing for being late. Takuto reassures her that it's fine. His eyes land on her earrings, and Yoi suddenly realizes she forgot to remove them. Takuto mentions they look similar to the earrings one of their regular customers wears. Yoi immediately understands he means Kohaku and hurriedly takes them off. Half-jokingly, Takuto asks whether she and Kohaku are dating. She shocks him into silence by admitting that they are. Before he can respond, her father calls her away, leaving Takuto standing there in stunned silence. As he processes the news, he recalls all the times Yoi had come to him for advice and wonders if it had always been about Kohaku. When she returns with supplies, Takuto suddenly blurts out an invitation for her to go shopping with him for his sister's birthday. Yoi sees no harm in it and says she'll consider it. Once she resumes work, Takuto questions himself since he was already taken. Finally, the day of the Kobe trip arrives. Her friends immediately complain that she isn't wearing the outfit and earrings they bought. Yoi apologizes, not admitting that she actually brought them along. Soon, Kohaku and his friends arrive. The moment Kohaku sees her in casual clothes, he walks straight up to her. When the other boys begin staring at her as well, Kohaku drapes an arm around Yoi's shoulders, declaring that they're no longer allowed to look at her. Their friends burst into teasing smiles at how openly they're acting like a couple. Kohaku lingers beside Yoi, reluctant to move away. She manages to free herself, but before she can rejoin the others, he stops her for a moment and leans down to whisper that she looks especially cute today. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Takuto begins his shift. As he checks the calendar, he notices the reminder that Yoi will be out for a few days. After the long ride, the group finally arrives in Kobe. Everyone is excited to start sightseeing, but Kohaku insists they stop by his house first. The others immediately protest, so they turn to Yoi to ask what she wants to do. Yoi quietly says she'll go along with whatever the group decides. With that, the group chooses sightseeing. They soon arrive at a bustling food market, and the group quickly becomes excited by the huge variety of food stalls. Once the others disappear into the crowd, Kohaku crouches down and complains about the heat. Yoi remembers how hot his body usually feels and offers to share her umbrella with him. Kohaku stands up and steps under it with her, leaning down slightly so their heads brush together as he comments on how much cooler it feels now. Yoi, however, feels like the closeness only makes the air around them hotter. Kohaku admits he's surprised she even brought an umbrella. Yoi explains that her skin turns red very easily under the sun. She's a little worried that he doesn't seem to be enjoying himself much, but Kohaku quickly insists he's having fun as long as he's with her. In fact, he admits he was hoping they could flirt a little more. Before she can respond, Sentaro returns carrying food. Kohaku walks over to him and casually takes a bite of the bun he's holding. Watching the interaction, Yoi suddenly feels uneasy. She begins thinking that she should have worn something cuter today and feels guilty for inviting people. Eventually, they all arrive at Kohaku's house. The girls are stunned by how large it is, but the boys settle in comfortably. Kohaku offers to buy dinner for everyone, and Kotobuki immediately takes the opportunity to request pizza and a horror show. Before long, the group gathers in the living room with pizza while the horror show plays. Kohaku asks if anyone wants drinks. The group declines except for Yoi. She starts to stand up to help him, but Kohaku insists on getting her something himself. After he leaves the room, Yoi begins to feel guilty for bringing everyone again. When Kohaku comes back, he hands her a bottle of tea before casually dropping down beside her on the couch. Then he asks if he should just spoil them so they can start season 2. Sentaro turns around to scold him but stops when he notices how close the pair is. He loudly accuses them of flirting, instantly catching everyone else's attention. Kohaku insists that he's just sitting beside her, then points out that something is happening in the show, successfully pulling everyone's attention back to the screen. While the others refocus on the screen, Kohaku leans closer and whispers to Yoi to meet him tonight. Eventually, everyone retreats to the bedrooms. Yoi is wide awake as she wonders what Kohaku might want to do later. She reminds herself that he already told her he's happy doing anything as long as they're together. Her phone suddenly lights up with a message from Kohaku asking if she's still awake. Kohaku has just stepped out of the bath and is waiting in the living room when Yoi quietly arrives. He notices her and pats the space beside him. Yoi walks over but chooses to sit at the far end of the couch. She tells him that her two friends are already asleep. Kohaku explains that his friends are still busy in their room, so he had to make an excuse. Yoi admits that she still feels a little guilty for turning the trip into a group outing. Kohaku easily reassures her, saying that he's actually enjoying himself. The trip feels a little like a school excursion with close friends. His comment makes Yoi realize that because they're in different school years, they probably won't get to experience an actual school trip together. Sensing her mood, Kohaku lightly teases that if it had been just the two of them, he would have flirted with her much more. Embarrassed, Yoi quickly says that there won't be any flirting happening tonight. Kohaku visibly deflates since he was hoping to have fun with her. She then explains that he can be a little too physical when expressing his feelings. In response, Kohaku slowly crawls closer across the couch and tells her it's only natural to want physical closeness. Yoi's heart begins to race, but she forces herself to stay calm. She asks if he behaved this way with the girls he dated before her. Before Kohaku can answer, Sentaro suddenly walks into the living room. Fortunately, he doesn't notice them since his focus is on the pizza. Yoi and Kohaku sit tucked together, hidden from Sentaro's view. In a low voice, Kohaku explains that being physically close is the only way he really knows how to express himself in a relationship. However, with Yoi, he wants to be intimate with her, but at the same time, he also wants to cherish her. He doesn't really know how to express those feelings properly. All he has ever known is how to show affection physically. Yoi watches him closely, surprised to see such an awkward yet sincere side of him. Before she realizes what she's doing, she reaches out to gently touch his hand. Kohaku instinctively moves his hand toward hers as well, but the microwave suddenly dings. The moment breaks as Sentaro finishes heating his food and leaves the living room. Both Yoi and Kohaku stand up, suddenly feeling strangely self-conscious. After a moment of silence, Yoi shyly suggests that they go on a proper date tomorrow before leaving. Kohaku immediately agrees. They decide to call it a night and plan to meet at 10 in the morning. Yoi returns to her room and closes the door behind her, but almost immediately she opens it again. Kohaku looks at her curiously as Yoi shyly asks if she can have a goodnight hug. Kohaku approaches slowly, reminding her that she was the one who insisted they shouldn't hug during the trip. Yoi admits that she finally understands the feelings he was trying to describe earlier, admitting she wants to touch him while cherishing him. Her words visibly surprise him, and Kohaku pulls her into a firm embrace. He's startled when Yoi wraps her arms around him in return, but Yoi quickly pulls away, wishing him good night before hurrying back into the room. Once the door closes, she slides down against it, burying her face in her hands as she tries to calm her racing heart. She realizes too late that even the hug was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Kohaku returns to his room where Sentaro immediately teases him about taking such a long bath. Kohaku drops onto the couch and casually replies that he didn't, leaving Sentaro confused. Back in her bed, Yoi's thoughts continue racing as she tries to figure out how to describe the emotions she feels for Kohaku. The next morning, Kotobuki wakes up and nearly yelps when she sees the strange position Yoi is kneeling in beside the bed. The commotion wakes Nobara as well, and Yoi asks for their help. A little later, Kohaku waits, dressed a bit more nicely than usual. When Yoi finally appears, he's visibly surprised. Yoi apologizes for taking so long, but Kohaku simply says that she looks sparkly today. Confused, Yoi asks what he means, but Kohaku brushes it off and suggests they head out. Yoi feels slightly disappointed. She had hoped for a stronger reaction after she asked her friends for help. As they head toward the door, they hear Kohaku's friends calling out, apparently looking for him. Kohaku immediately panics and grabs Yoi's wrist so they can hurry out. He quickly explains that he doesn't want his friends to see her. Yoi stops walking and asks if she should take that as a compliment. Kohaku smiles and tells her that she definitely should. As he says it, Yoi can't help thinking that he looks dazzling. They end up visiting an aquarium, and Yoi is impressed by how beautiful the place is. As they step inside, Kohaku raises his hand slightly and asks if he can hold hers. In response, Yoi lifts her own hand and admits she'd like that too. They spend the morning wandering through the exhibits, their hands linking together whenever they can. Kohaku even snaps a few photos while chatting about a video game he once played that involved fishing. At one point, they get the chance to feed fish, and Kohaku ends up dumping nearly the entire bag of feed into the tank at once. Yoi is completely charmed by the otter exhibit. Later, they stop for otter-themed drinks and food sold nearby. Kohaku doesn't care much about the novelty, but he smiles while watching how much Yoi enjoys it. He even leans over and bites the bun she offered him. They then stop by the souvenir shop. Yoi considers buying an otter plush for her older sister, which surprises Kohaku since he never knew she had one. Yoi shows him a picture on her phone and explains that her sister is very different from her, which makes her quite popular at school. Yoi eventually shares that in middle school she had a crush on a boy. One day, she overheard him talking with his friends. He admitted that he wasn't interested in Yoi but wanted the attention of Yoi's older sister. The story instantly angers Kohaku as he demands to know where that boy is now, saying he'd like to set him straight. But his attention quickly shifts back to Yoi when she explains that the incident made it difficult for her to talk to boys. Even so, she says it never made her resent her sister. Hearing this, Kohaku begins to understand the source of Yoi's low self-esteem. He asks to see her sister's photo again. Studying it carefully, he finally shrugs and says he still prefers Yoi, especially her face. Yoi quickly changes the subject and asks about his own family. Kohaku explains that he has one older brother who is the perfect example of an upstanding citizen. Despite that, Kohaku admits he has no idea where his brother is now or what he's doing. His brother apparently had a falling out with their parents because of an ex-partner, and after that, his brother disappeared from their lives. Afterward, Yoi excuses herself to use the restroom. While she's gone, she keeps thinking about what he said and how oddly detached he sounded. When she returns, she spots Kohaku chatting with some girls nearby. Something uncomfortable stirs in her chest. Kohaku notices her and politely ends the conversation before walking over. Seeing the troubled look on her face, he asks if something is wrong. Yoi asks about the girls. Kohaku casually explains that he was returning a cell phone they had dropped. Watching her expression, he suddenly asks if she's jealous. Yoi instantly becomes flustered and denies it, so they move toward the next exhibit. They soon arrive at a large spherical aquarium filled with colorful fish, but Yoi remains distracted. Kohaku tries to lighten the mood, but she suddenly ends up venting everything she's been feeling that day. In the end, she admits that she should have simply told him she was jealous earlier. She couldn't help thinking those girls seemed like a better match for him, especially since it took all of her courage just to wear a dress today. She realizes how painfully low her confidence sounds. Kohaku then says that Yoi is one of the few people who doesn't treat him like a prince, though he suspects that's partly because she disliked him when they first met. Still, he says he appreciates it. Being treated normally allows him to relax and truly be himself around her. He begins listing all the moments they've shared since meeting and tells her how happy and fun they were. Then he mentions that when he first saw his brother devastated after a breakup, Kohaku thought it was pathetic. But now he actually wants to experience that kind of love himself, the kind where two people fall so deeply for each other that it changes them. Because of that, he says he has come to respect his brother for allowing himself to fall that far. Encouraged by his honesty, Yoi shyly admits that she chose the earrings today because she wanted to match with him. Kohaku's expression softens. He gently takes her hand, pulls her a little closer, and places a light kiss on her forehead. Then he steps back and says they should head home. Yoi watches his back as he leads the way, thinking that she will only fall deeper in love with him. When he takes her hand again, she wonders why he didn't take the opportunity to kiss her. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next.